Hello and welcome to the next portion of this tutorial. In this video we're going to talk a little bit about the components that go into making our robot. So first up, we've got the power distribution panel, or PDP for short. At the bottom here is where we plug in our battery, positive and negative being indicated on either side. This side is where we plug in our control modules power, so you'll find more of those later in this video. And on these, you'll find red and black. They are terminals for motor controllers. These are operated by pushing a screwdriver into the square hole, pushing down the lever, putting in your wire, and releasing the lever by removing the screwdriver, and this just grips onto the wire. In the middle here, we have spaces for various different fuses. You can find out how to place these in the kickoff guide that is given at the beginning of the year. These ports down here are operated in a similar manner to the large ones. Just push down that white tab with a screwdriver, put in your wire, and then release the tab. So, this is used primarily to distribute power from the battery amongst all of our components. Next up, we have our voltage regulator module, or VRM for short. At the top here is our power in, and we have various different options for power outs. 5-volt signal light here, so if any of these turn on or are being used, this is on. Same with this for this side. So the purpose of this is to stabilize the power coming from the battery, as it can fluctuate a lot, which can be harmful to whatever we are trying to power. It also acts to step down and sort of control the power flow more. So we plug things like our signal webcam's power into this. So next up is our battery. It is quite heavy. It's 12 volts. You're going to want to store these in an upright position because they are acid batteries, and if stored otherwise, it can harm them in the long run. Thing to note, never touch the two terminals at the same time. Even if you know that it is completely dead, it can still have a little bit of charge and can still shock you. The two terminals being these metal probes coming off of it. These usually have two cables coming off and connecting to a pink plug right above it, and these are electrical taped up. Next up, the pneumatic control module, or PCM for short. So this just acts to sort of control the pneumatics of your robot. So here we have 0 through 7, those are for solenoids, and here our compressor, which is the power for that, power in at the top. These ports act in the same way as the ones on the voltage regulator module, or VRM. So next up, we've got the motor controllers. So I have two designs here. The basic purpose is to give more reliable power to the motors and allow us to control them more finely. So at the bottom on this one, we have power for which connects to the power distribution panel, and at the top, power for the motors. You just unscrew these screws, put in your connector, screw them down, and you're good. This one has cables coming off of it. Red is positive, black is negative, green is also negative, and white is positive. So the white and green go to the motors, and the red and black to the power distribution panel. So the one with wires, you're going to have to put connectors onto those wires to connect them to the motors. Next up are motors. So these are very simple. 2 wires coming off of it, one black one red one, red being positive, black being negative. And one thing to note about these, they can get quite hot when they've been running for a bit, so try to avoid touching them if you know it has been running. Okay, so next up we have the Robo Rio. This is what controls your robot, and it takes the code from programming and runs it during the match. So we have some digital data ports on the left side here. Bottom here is for your signal light, some analog data pins, and some PWM pins. At the top left here, we have the power in. So these you have to unscrew and put cables in and then re-screw down. And at the top we have a Ethernet port here for the router, as well as a couple USB and printer cable for any other accessories like a external webcam or something along those lines. So next up we have the router. It has 3 ports on the back, 2 Ethernet ports, which are the larger ones, and 1 DC power port. We typically don't use the DC power port, as it is much easier to simply use a power over Ethernet cord to supply power as well as receive data. And the purpose of this is to receive the controls from us. It's what makes it possible to wirelessly control. And that power over Ethernet cord, or the just DC power cord that you are using, plugs into the voltage regulator module, as you have previously seen. And next we have the signal light. It's just a light that we put at the top and blinks or is simply solid to indicate that the robot is either being wirelessly controlled, which is the blinking state, or is simply powered on, which is the just solid on state. There are 3 terminals. You unscrew the screws and put in a cable and then re-screw them. 2 of which are positive and negative, and all you need to do is connect them to the Robo Rio where I have previously indicated. So last but not least, we have the breaker, as it is sometimes called, or the main switch for the robot. It serves to basically be our off switch for when we don't want to just unplug the battery. So here it connects to the positive and terminal wire of the battery and the positive terminal wire of the power distribution panel, and it basically either allows electricity to flow through or does not. So here there's a red button and a lever that pops out when you press that red button. When the lever is in, it is powered on, and when you push the red button, the lever pops out and it powers off. One thing to note is that this should not be used as an alternative to unplugging the battery when you are working on anything electrical. It is always safer to simply unplug the battery. So that does it for this tutorial. If you want to check out the next one, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to properly position these and their importance.